urgent. Russian forces on the front lines are turning into fertilizer for Ukraine's black soil. Russia's front is crumbling. Starlinks are blocked, and the rage-fueled fist of Ukraine's armed forces spares no one. It's too late to run. Hundreds of aircraft to wipe out the occupiers. Allies are bankrolling the enemy's mass elimination. Moscow isn't ready for this. Russia will pay. New EU sanctions will crush the pseudo-empire's economy. The dictator is panicking. Meanwhile, a new Ukrainian super missile is set to reach the very heart of the aggressor state. Moscow is in the crosshairs. Kremlin, brace yourself, the temperature is rising. Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Farafonova here with the latest updates. Turning into fertilizer, the occupiers are attempting to cross the Oskil River in Ukraine's Kharkiv region but are failing. In the area of responsibility of the 3rd Army Corps in eastern Ukraine, Russian forces are concentrating their efforts on attempts to force a crossing of the Oskil River. So far, these attempts have resulted in significant losses for them, and the occupiers' advance has effectively stalled.
The enemy is very eager to cross the river and establish a foothold on the other side. Sometimes they do manage to cross, but after that, the infantry that makes it across turns into fertilizer. As a result, they are currently unable to create a bridgehead that would allow them to develop their plans and move further.
On another flank, in the Liman area, Russian forces are attempting to bypass Ukrainian positions, seeping through them in an effort to get into the defenders' rear.
The situation there is extremely difficult. We view this as part of a comprehensive operation targeting Kramatorsk and Sloviansk. If we briefly characterize the entire line of contact, the enemy's tactics over the past week have not changed significantly. They continue to apply pressure. They try to maneuver around the flanks to somehow seep through our positions. The goal is the same, to get into the rear, cut off a position, and then introduce additional forces wherever they succeed.
At the same time, Volokov emphasized that Ukrainian soldiers are doing everything possible to prevent the enemy from infiltrating their positions.
We counter them with drone operations. We make it so that they cannot seep through. This effectiveness is what the entire defense of the 3rd Army Corps rests on.
Hundreds of aircraft to be delivered. President Volodymyr Zelensky stated that Ukraine has received confirmation from its partners regarding the transfer of 250 combat aircraft as part of a new aviation coalition. According to him, this will be one of the largest decisions made by international allies in the area of defense support. Zelensky emphasized that the agreements cover not only the transfer of aircraft, but also the training of Ukrainian pilots, technical support, and the creation of infrastructure for servicing modern aviation. Some partners have already identified specific aircraft models that could be delivered, but details are not being disclosed for security reasons. According to military experts, such a support package could significantly strengthen Ukraine's air defense and change the situation in the air. At the same time, the implementation of the program will be gradual, as it requires time to train personnel and adapt the equipment. The president stressed that the first deliveries could begin in the near future, while the full implementation of the initiative will take place in several stages. Sanctions continue to tighten the noose around Russia. More than 100 individuals and companies will be added to the blacklist under a new EU sanctions package against Russia. The blacklist is expected to include, among others, Russian oil refineries that have been attacked by Ukraine in order to prevent their restoration with the involvement of European companies. Sanctions may also target 10 vessels from the United Arab Emirates to increase pressure on Russia's so-called shadow fleet. In addition, the sanctions will impose restrictions on more than 30 companies and individuals linked to Russia's defense sector, as well as on 13 companies from China, Belarus, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, and the UAE that help Russia circumvent sanctions. The list will also include propagandists involved in crimes committed in Bucha, as well as those responsible for the abduction of Ukrainian children and their transfer to Russia, and individuals involved in the theft and destruction of Ukraine's cultural heritage. France will provide Ukraine with an additional radar for the SAMPT surface-to-air missile system for the period while one of the existing units is undergoing repairs. This was announced at a briefing in Kyiv by France's Minister of the Armed Forces and Veterans Affairs, Catherine Watrin. She noted that work to restore the damaged equipment is currently underway and that the replacement radar will allow the system's defensive capabilities to be maintained. The minister explained that the availability of new radars depends on the manufacturer's production capacity, which is why France is focusing on the maintenance and repair of the systems already in use by Ukraine. Watrin also assured that the French side is cooperating with MBDA on the supply of missiles for the SAMPT system. According to her, the manufacturer managed to double missile production between 2024 and 2025. The minister emphasized the need to further expand production capacity and confirmed that work in this direction is ongoing. Kramatorsk and Zaporizhzhia under threat. Putin has set his sights on several more Ukrainian cities, eyeing them like a predator. A plan for a new offensive is already on the desks of Russian generals, and this move could prove disastrous. Ukrainian forces have struck the enemy from behind. Fierce blows and the beginning of the liberation of occupied territories are underway. When will Russia finally collapse face first into the dirt? Details coming up next.
Putin is preparing a large-scale offensive this spring. According to several analysts, in the next 2 to 3 months, Russia may attempt to carry out 2 major offensive operations, one towards Kramatorsk and another in the direction of Zaporizhzhia. Evidence for this includes the formation of strategic reserves, the accumulation of equipment and ammunition in key areas, as well as the transfer of additional air defense and electronic warfare systems there.
Only one person determines what will happen, Putin. You see, Russia is a personalist dictatorship, meaning it is an extremely personalist state. And the entire rest of the establishment may want one thing. But if Putin alone wants something else, then the opinion of the entire establishment will not matter at all.
However, no matter what Putin wants, all his dreams will most likely be shattered by the harsh reality of what is happening on the battlefield. Russia's front is collapsing. By April, the Kremlin will have nothing left to launch offensives with, and the money is running out. Ukrainian military sources are already writing about this. Russia's redeployment of reserves near Sloviansk does not indicate a planned offensive, but rather points to a critical situation within the Russian army. Russian troops are being forced to prematurely use their spring reserves for assaults in the Sloviansk direction. If things continue this way due to a shortage of soldiers, the occupiers will only be retreating by summer.
Even now in February, they are forced to transfer reserves from neighboring sections of the front to the Sloviansk direction, as well as those intended for the spring, so by April there may be no one left to launch an offensive on Sloviansk.
In addition to soldiers and equipment, in recent months the Kremlin has also been desperately short of money to recruit ever more waves of cannon fodder.
In Russia, basically, a banking crisis has begun. Granted, it's still in a latent form for now, but nevertheless, even by their, within their own frame of reference, the parameters they use, this is basically already a banking crisis.
But the Kremlin still won't relent and continues to ruthlessly sacrifice its soldiers at the front, lacking any significant success along the stretch from Zaporizhzhia to Pokrovsk. The Russian army is pushing forward in the Sumy and Kharkiv regions. The enemy has entrenched itself there on new sections along the border, sometimes advancing up to 4 kilometers deep into Ukrainian territory. In response, our defenders deliver precise strikes against concentrations of occupiers. This is how Ukrainian aviation delivers powerful strikes on the enemy assault group's strongholds. And here the Ukrainian armed forces are already cutting off Russian logistics in the Kostiantynivka direction. The enemy instantly lost 7 of their Bukanka vans, 2 passenger cars, and at least 3 soldiers. The Shadow unit also took credit for destroying an enemy dugout and 2 cannons over the past day. The occupiers in Oleshki suffer daily losses as a result of strikes by our units. And what do you think of the work done by the special forces of the Revenge Tactical Group from the International Legion of the GUR? The scouts are utterly destroying Russian infantry and their shelters, as well as striking enemy cannons and MLRs in the area of Stepnohersk-Zaporizhzhia region. And this rare target for the Ukrainian armed forces was taken out by the soldiers of the 14th Mechanized Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. As established by Ukrainian aerial reconnaissance, the robotic complex was transporting mortars and ammunition to the enemy and paid the price for it. Such precision and coordination in the work of the Ukrainian armed forces terrifies Kremlin generals. They literally have no idea what to do next. Their army is breaking its own mortality records for the 2nd time already. In January 2026, Russia once again lost more soldiers than it was able to mobilize. As it became known, around 22,000 new recruits joined the Russian army over the past month. At the same time, the confirmed losses of the occupiers amounted to more than 30,500 people. And while Putin and his army are setting records for losses, the Ukrainian armed forces are showing record results in destroying enemy drones. Last month, the defense forces achieved their highest numbers yet in shooting down Shaheds. And even though it looks like scenes from a Hollywood action movie, this is exactly how our defenders operate. A Ukrainian armed forces helicopter armed with an M134 minigun is doing its job.
The Russian army has been left blind and deaf. Elon Musk has cut the occupiers off from Starlink satellite communicators. We'll explain what kind of catastrophe this has turned into for Putin's forces on the front lines. Watch now.
They're complaining.
Communication has disappeared in all units of the Russian armed forces. Right now, everything has reverted to the state at the beginning of the special military operation in 2022, when there was a complete lack of coordination between units, which led to the well-known result.
They're writing poetry.
The connection is gone, there's no communication. What's the reason for our troubles? Elon Musk is to blame for it. Elon, what's wrong with you?
When they're even making threats. Well,
Trump, now you need to pick up the phone and call Musk. After all, their relationship got pretty bad for a while. So just calmly and quietly explain to him that he needs to come to his senses. Not only should he cut off the Russians, but he should shut it down completely. Starlink.
the reason for this Russian hysteria at all levels is the shutdown of Starlink at the occupiers' front lines. The Russian army is currently experiencing a real shutdown at the front. Zetwin Kori. They recount the problems with storming positions in the SU and call Elon Musk a fascist.
Communications in Russian troops are being cut off on a serious scale. This greatly reduces the combat effectiveness of the troops. Russian drones are using Starlink terminals. This immediately caused a whole range of, huge concern in Ukraine. And the company SpaceX and Starlink are taking their own measures. What measures? Currently, all of the unregistered devices are now being disconnected.
Back in December of last year, Ukrainian radio electronics specialist Sergei Beskresnov wrote that the Russians had begun installing Starlink terminals on attack drones, and Russian drone pilots control birds in real time.
There are currently absolutely no modern and sophisticated electronic warfare systems that can effectively jam or suppress this communication. And thanks to its exceptionally high and reliable, let's say, speed and bandwidth, it allowed drones to be successfully piloted and flown through our air defense system in real time at extremely low altitudes.
At the end of January, the Russians used Starlink to destroy helicopters in the Air Force. In the Kirovohrad region, hundreds of kilometers from the front line, and a passenger train in the Kharkiv region. Now, however, Beskresnov wrote that a retaliatory strike was delivered against the Russian army.
At the front lines, it's not even a problem. The enemy is facing a catastrophe. All command and control of the troops has collapsed. In many areas, assault operations have been halted. In our troops, it was discovered that there were problems for those who did not promptly submit lists for private Starlinks. The processing is still ongoing.
The Ukrainian specialist also suggested that the occupiers recall the experience of their forefathers and start learning Morse code. Less than 2 weeks ago, Serhiy Flash Beskresnov became the technology advisor to the new Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov. Most likely, this appointment was one of the factors that influenced Fedorov to officially reach out to SpaceX. Starlink does not operate in Russia. The occupiers purchased terminals in third countries and activated them using foreign accounts. These terminals operated on Ukrainian territory and provided the Russian army with frontline communications. The new Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov. He asked Musk to urgently block all terminals on Ukrainian territory that are not directly connected to the Ukrainian Ministry of Defense. At the same time, Ukrainian users have the ability to register even unofficial terminals through a special electronic system.
Starlinks that have been added to the whitelist are operational, while Russian terminals have already been blocked. We continue to verify Starlink terminals. The first batch of terminals, those that made it onto the whitelist, are already working. For now, the whitelists are updated once a day. If you have submitted your terminal for registration but it is not working yet, please be patient. This is a very large-scale process that takes time. At the same time, we are already working to ensure that data is checked in real time.
Even the Ukrainian command was surprised by the scale of Starlink usage by the Russian army. Communication is logistics under difficult conditions, where many kilometers from the front line, all supply routes are monitored by enemy drones. Without the transmission of large amounts of information through such a channel, there simply won't be any supply.
We are receiving information from our intelligence about total panic among the Russians. Right now, the Russians have no channels for command and control of their troops at the front. This also applies to EW pilots. EW, ELINT, and LBS are not functioning. Right now, we've stopped. Let's put it this way. We have now stopped the enemy's attempts to attack us with UAVs using Starlinks. We expected that the Russians had already started using Starlinks on small unmanned aerial vehicles like the Molnia, or BM-35, or using unmanned aerial vehicles like the Shahed. It was only a matter of time. This was a very serious threat for us, and that's why we took critical measures on our side.
Right now, the Russian army has no adequate replacement. The Russian equivalent of Starlink is the Rasvet system, which was supposed to be launched in 2027. It's not ready at all. They haven't even designed or launched the satellite that will provide this connection yet. So right now, the most effective solution for Russian soldiers is to brush up on Morse code.
More powerful than ATACMS and capable of reaching Moscow. What is known about Ukraine's new FP9 missile from Firepoint? That's exactly what we'll break down in the next report.
Ukraine will have new ballistic missiles. The defense company Firepoint is preparing to deploy the FP7 and FP9 ballistic missiles. The missile developers report that they are significantly cheaper than their Western counterparts, and their range allows them to strike strategic targets, deep within the rear of the Russian Federation.
As for the warhead, this is one of the standard components of these missiles. And for example, the smaller FP7 missile uses an American 500-pound bomb, a standard high-explosive aerial bomb, FAB. And the FP9 has a more serious one, a 2,000-pound high-explosive aerial bomb that is naturally without the tail section, so it weighs a bit less, but it's the largest American bomb of World War II.
It has been stated that the FP7 missile is a budget-friendly counterpart to the American ATACMS system. It is designed for high-precision strikes at short distances. A more powerful modification, the FP9, is capable of striking targets at distances comparable to those to Moscow or St. Petersburg.
Firepoint announced the creation of two missiles. One is roughly a replacement for ATACMS, that's the FP7, with a range of up to, well, initially they said 200 kilometers, now they say up to 300. And the FP9 is already a more serious missile with a range of up to 900 kilometers. Initially they said 800 to 850, but testing has shown a somewhat greater range. And the warheads, accordingly, if the FP7s is relatively small, about 150 kilograms, then the FP9 is a serious missile with a warhead of 800 kilograms.
It's obvious even to the naked eye that these new missiles will strengthen Ukraine's defensive positions.
And the targets depend on the type of warhead. If it's a penetrating warhead, then it's for fortified targets. If it's a conventional warhead, well, for example, a factory warehouses, then it's a high explosive bomb. It just needs to break through the roof and detonate inside the building. If, for example, the target is a strike on the positions of anti-aircraft missile systems, then a different warhead might be used. In cases where there is a large number of submunitions and it's enough for them to simply riddle the trailers with electronic equipment. This would be enough to put the system out of commission for a long time or even destroy it completely.
Firepoint notes that, unlike drones or cruise missiles, ballistic projectiles have a higher chance of penetrating air defenses around the Russian capital.
Yes, and when people say that Russian air defense systems can't be spread out across the entire territory, that's actually not necessary. It's enough to create several fighter patrol zones, and breaking through them will already be very difficult. And a fighter jet is the most effective weapon against aerodynamic deep strike weapons, well, missiles and drones. But if we use ballistic weapons, then in this case, the fighter component is completely excluded. Aircraft are ineffective against ballistic targets, and all short and medium range systems are also excluded.
At the moment, the missiles are undergoing testing. The speed of their development is due to reduced bureaucracy in the defense sector. It is expected that codification and official adoption into service will take place as early as February of this year.
That's all for now. Stay with us to be the first to know what's happening right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.